This is Scott Spears, and today I'm joined by what I'm sure will be a very interesting guest, Andrieh Vitimus, metaphysician, who has studied voodoo, hypnotism, and psychology. Andrieh, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
Interesting background there. So let's start here at the beginning of your life, and we'll kind of go from there. What was your childhood like?
It was a little rough. You know, if people know my story, the reason why I actually got into this stuff is to understand how the brain works. Because I grew up as an abused child, really. And I had to understand how to undo what was done so I could lead a more successful, happy life.
Now, what if you don't mind, what kind of abuse happened when you were a child?
Mostly physical.
Physical.
From alcoholics, and I don't really hold it against, my father who did that stuff, because he had his own pain and issues that, as he's worked through it, we actually have a relationship now.
How were you able to get past it? What is it in the brain that you've learned that allows you to get past a childhood like that?
Simply put, any one of our memories, our experiences, anything from our emotions can be changed. People think that our experiences and our sense of selves is rock solid, but it's not. You can change every component of your being, every component of your personality, every component of the memories, so they don't have the impacts. And when you start changing those things, you notice that you will naturally gravitate more towards a happier life. You'll seek out what makes you happy. Now, granted, for a lot of people listening, there's a lot of garbage that you have to get rid of before that can happen. And I've spent a lot of years learning how to get rid of garbage so this can happen. But realistically, we all owe it to ourselves to kind of try this, because otherwise we aren't living up to the happiest life. We kind of get stuck in the cycle of abuse, which many people can talk about. And this was my method after, actually I was an altar boy as well, so it was around religious symbols a lot. It just, Catholicism did not work for me. And I was Eastern Orthodox. It just did not work for me, mainly because when I went to high school, you see the hypocrisy there. It just did not work. It was not in a viable system because people weren't acting in a Christian manner. So I had to find a way to heal myself. The famous phrase is healer, heal thyself, to actually be functional. Most people, when they're in an abusive situation, they actually end up in the same kind of situation. And to break that cycle, you have to understand, how does the brain actually work? How does the brain work? How does you work? How does your psyche work? How do you get past all those issues?
How do you? How do you get the garbage out?
Well, there's different ways, right? I mean, it would seem like voodoo is very different from hypnosis, and it's very different from energy work, and it's very different from New Age thought, and it's very different from prayer, but they're not. They all touch on different aspects that you have to understand if you're doing self-change, if you're trying to change yourself. In some ways, they involve dealing with mysteries, which we call spirits, but Catholics know about spirits. We would pray to the saints all the times, but then actually understanding how to get it to work, understanding how your brain processes memory and how you process habit, so you can break those habits and do something different, what it actually takes in the real world to be more successful, what brings you happiness, and then actually do it, which is where a lot of people get stuck. Force yourself to do it, trick your mind into doing it. And then the other stuff, a lot of the metaphysics, lets you get the luck you need, right? That's the real goal, to get the synchronicity luck for you to get the right opportunity to be at the right place at the right time. So that's kind of a bonus material. And you actually need that for the people who have suffered trauma and pain. You actually need the luck to show up at the right time, and because you might not have the fortitude all the time. You might still be building that fortitude up. So you need to have the luck show up at the same time, to have just the right opportunity to show up when you need it, that you've been working on for a few months.
How would you go from wanting to get past this horrific childhood to voodoo, and hypnosis.
Yeah.
Because I would think the natural progression might be psychology.
I got a degree in that.
Right. So how did we
It
go
didn't
from?
work.
It didn't work.
It did not work.
Why not?
At a point, because many of my family members were also psychic. A thing I didn't know until my mom died.
Psychic,
Yeah, they had psychic abilities.
not a psychologist.
Yeah.
Now, do you have psychic ability?
I do when I want to, as in when I'm open to it and I'm in ritual, I definitely do. But I'm mostly, when I'm not in ritual space, which is a separate space, headspace, not, because I want to be able to function. But that said, if I need to be, like something's going to happen, I can avoid it. So there was a lot of that in my family. There was a lot of exposure, especially from my younger brother who was into it. I was a scientist, still consider myself a scientist, even though I'm into metaphysics, and it would seem that that conflicts with science. It really doesn't. But there was a point at which I got my psychology degree because it was like, well, how do I deal with this? Well, I'll get a psychology degree so I can really understand, with an emphasis on cognitive science, so I can really understand what are the patterns that I need to break. And I would successfully use those, but there came a point where they did not work, where things got weird in my life. So weird that it's like fictional weird. But there were other people involved that saw this happen, where I would go to somewhere and there would be shadows that looked like people moving around me, and there would be random bad things that would occur that, even though I had good solid plans, I would vet with other people, I'd make sure I knew where I was going, I'd do all the things psychology told me, it would just go horribly wrong in a way that was not really explainable, like an odd sort of way. Like you would move and the cars' axles, not the cars' axles, the truck's axles would break on the road, and you'd be stuck there for 2 days. Stuff that and it would keep happening. And the shadows moving, that was a particularly thing where people didn't tell me right away that they could see these things because it would freak them out. They would just leave me alone. So I didn't even know. Like, I was trying to block it out. I thought, I'm insane. Right? That's a natural reaction.
Well, when you said that, I was thinking bad luck, maybe. It seems a little off, I would say.
Yeah. But when you're seeing shadows, you just think it's in your head. Until other people say, you realize the last time we were at your house, these shadows were moving, they looked like people. It freaked me out. And people kept telling me that.
So what was happening?
What I believe happened was what shamans used to call was an initiation. Although it came a little later in my life, because it usually would happen more towards 13 or high school, but a shamanic initiation is sort of when the spirits themselves, or you have a spiritual experience which forces you to grapple with a lot of underlying natures of the universe. In Christianity, for instance, they call it the dark night of the soul, where you are forced into a situation where you have to contemplate spirituality, and you're not given any other choice. And this is actually referenced in the Bible, but from my perspective, it was a shamanic initiation. Essentially, it was something that would force me to grapple with the fact that there may be more out there than the material world than I was willing to accept, and that it would not let me put it down until I would do something about it, that I would learn to do something about it to get myself out of the situation.
Why doesn't this happen to everybody?
Well, I have a lot of interesting theories about that, and the number one thing that I've done, and I've done a lot of research on this, is an in-person research, and I'd love to go back to the university and get a degree and study this, is when you start asking people about their family history who are currently into magic or psychic ability, and they're not a charlatan. That's a hard one to determine who isn't a fraud. When they're not a fraud, they've shown some real ability in your presence in one way or another, and everyone has different abilities. You start asking them about their family, their genealogical background, and you find out stuff like their mom didn't do this, but their grandmother had a weird box under the bed, or their great-grandmother would force the priest to come by and bless every single window in the house. This, to a modern ear, sounds ridiculous. Why would you have the priest come? But from a metaphysical point of view, that is protection against evil spirits. So they were doing this stuff, but they never talk about it. So you look for these cues all the time when you're listening. You hear stuff like, oh yeah, when they moved from this country, the great-great-grandmother was a midwife who would do healings with herbs. Or, yeah, they would just know things if they sat under the right kind of tree. All these kind of stories you hear from people's families. It seems to be like, now I personally believe most people could get into metaphysics and improve their life, but it seems like some people are forced into it just by a sort of what their family not upbringing is, but their family genealogy is. Like seems to run in families.
It was the word I tripped over when we started here. Metaphysician. What is that?
It just means metaphysics, or is just the nature of reality, as it were. So many people will throw around the terms occult, but that's a loaded word. And all occult means is hidden. Metaphysics is kind of like, if there's a physical world, then there's a belief that there's an underlying principle of the world that is spiritual. That isn't necessarily just material.
Now you have a website, AndriehVitimus.com, but on there, I was doing some research. You do rituals and ceremonies.
I do.
Now tell me about, I'm just going to throw some of these things out here. Tell me what would happen. Self-confidence.
Yeah, I mean, that was a ceremony that I wrote after talking with my associate, Phil Farber, that actually works off of a principle called mirror neurons, which is a hot topic in cognitive science. So for self-confidence, an easy one to do that, even more than doing ritual, would just imagine a time that you were confident, and then close your eyes, breathe as deeply as you can, and let that feeling, sights, sounds fill up your whole body. As you do that, your body naturally does not know the difference between what you're imagining and what's going on in the present. So it releases all the neurochemicals, so you actually will have the neurochemical soup of confidence in your body even after you do the meditation.
Now to me that seems very scientific, but some of these other ones that I wrote down, banishing, self-transformation, illumination, gratitude, relationship, all these things, when people hear that, and they hear the word voodoo, psychic, hypnotist, I think in their mind they think ritual would be another word, ceremony, that something is going to be done with something that is going to, for sure, allow them to banish somebody or have self-confidence when they walk to the microphone or get the girl or the guy that they want.
And thank you, Hollywood, for that.
Okay.
The truth is that while it's not all in our head, I do believe there's a spiritual component to this. There's a phrase from Louis Martini down in New Orleans. The working or ritual is the start of the work. As in, yes, you might be able to get the congruity, the luck, the things to fall your way, and that's why we do ritual. But you still have to go out and do it. If you want to be confident to get the girl, you still have to go to the nightclub to get the girl.
Yeah, but now here's the difference, I think. If I say I wanted somebody banished, okay, and I want somebody banished, now I'm going to go to you and pay you money to do a banishing ritual or ceremony. Now, first of all, what would happen when I gave you that money, and what can I be guaranteed?
Well, first, I probably wouldn't take your money for that.
Well, banishing would be free.
No. Banishing is kind of where you're banishing influences that you don't want in your life. So you could possibly do a person. But I'd ask a lot of questions.
Okay.
Okay? Like, were you really done with the person? People will say they're done with a person, but they don't mean it. You know, and what they mean is, I would like to hurt this person, or when you're really done with a person, I would ask, okay, a lot of questions. Okay, if you know this person goes to this nightclub every week, not, just to go back to the example, he goes to the nightclub every week, and then, okay, I'll do a ceremony to try to remove that person's influence. And I have done this type of thing before in certain circumstances, mostly when people are abused and they really need that person out. So then if you go to the same places they are, then that's okay. You're not truly done with the person. Means any act of magic has to be accompanied by accompanying life changes. So now if it's an emergency, yeah, I might take it on, and that person, might get arrested, or some bad luck might befall them, or something. Not the person who paid me, the other person.
Now, how could that happen?
Well, there's a lot of ways that could happen. There's a lot of explanations. I mean, we could do quantum route, or we could just say, well, it just works. But it essentially, we're all connected anyway, from a lot of different perspectives, spiritual perspectives. We're connected. And the underlying principles of the universe allow for things to have nonlinear causes, which means I might not know what the cause is. So there's a correlation, not a proof. Science wants to prove everything A goes to B. Well, what is more likely would happen is I would do a ritual, and a series of events, unbeknownst and unknown to me, would start to set in motion that would remove that person. And it might not happen instantaneously. It might take a couple months, and all of a sudden that person's out of the person's life.
Now, the ritual, that's the part I'm interested in. What would you do?
For this particular thing?
Yeah.
I would probably, it isn't quite as easy as this, but I'd pretty much take a picture and wrap it, because that physical action doesn't do the magic. What does the magic is your mind. Your mind is the key to this. The physical action just reminds you what you're doing up here. So if you're just wrapping a picture with rope or something like that and then putting it into a river so it flows down the river, that's just telling your mind what's going on. Then from there, it's your consciousness is using that physical tool and what's going on with the physical tool to cause changes in the reality around you. So this doesn't happen instantly, like I said. Even if I would do that, and I might, honestly, for something that was severe, I would probably ask my spirits that's what voodoo does, to help the person. But for something that was severe, or not so severe, wrapping them up and then putting them into the water, first, mentally, if you believe it, you'll start to do things differently. That's the first component. So you might avoid the person, you might avoid situations, and you do it automatically, because if you really believe in the power of what you've done, you would treat it as if it was real. And by treating it as real, you automatically have to change your behavior. That's step one. Two, there's the nonlinear component or spiritual component where that a series of events would happen that would eventually remove that person from your sphere of influence, of your sphere of your universe, as it were, outside your circle of friends or outside your, personal boundaries. Now, that might come with consequences, too, unintended consequences, where that person is removed, but then some of your other friends who side with them go, too, because it's not just that it could have no consequences. So psychologically, there's a component, and then there's a component of what happens spiritually, and then there's a component that you might not expect. This is why you have to be careful.
It's very interesting. I want to get into some of the items that you've brought here and describe what those are and how those work. And then we're going to take a break and actually get into hypnosis here. But what are the items that you brought here?
Well, I just brought something that I think most people can identify with. This is a St. Michael candle. And for Catholics who may or may not have ever worked with St. Michael, and I brought a red cloth. Normally what I would do, let's say you needed something like strength, courage, which Michael is great at. I would just put down the cloth, face the candle in front of me, and light it, and I have some oil too that I made. That basically does the same thing. It just gives a certain scent to the candle, and then I would focus on praying to Michael. Now there's a way to pray. Prayer is a form of metaphysics, it's a form of magic, but it's a socially accepted form. would pray to St. Michael for those things, but I would do it in a certain way until my mind was convinced that I already had them. This is the step that most people, when they pray, they miss. They just don't go far enough. So they just say, one time they just go, hey, St. Michael, I need protection. And that's it. But it's kind of like a staticky phone call that you can't hear, like, at first, because the mind is all distracted, it's not focused, and what happens is, well, you can't really connect to the spiritual world that way. So you learn techniques, like hypnosis and other things, to really push your mind deeper and deeper into focus, so that way when you're praying, and you keep praying until you get deep enough that you believe, it's belief, that you believe that when you're praying, that St. Michael can hear you. It's not just your conscious mind is going at 1,000 different miles per minute. It's like, well, hey, where's the washroom? Or, hey, you know what? I forgot my oven stuff. All of that means you're not at the right state to connect. So a lot of the hypnosis, a lot of the mind stuff is to get deep enough while you're praying, even with a simple Michael candle, and everyone understands who St. Michael is. He's a protector. That you understand, feel, know that Michael is there. And at that point, we can argue about what's going on, whether St. Michael is real or not, but your mind believes it is.
So isn't this whole thing then just mind over matter?
In a lot of ways it is, except sometimes, as I started with the story of the shadows, it wasn't. So it goes both ways, that sometimes there's components that are not just mind-based that seem to occur out there. And there's lots of paranormal investigators of which I sometimes help with, that have evidence to suggest this wasn't just a kind of mind effect. But that's a good start, is mind over matter, is a good way to start it. That once you start going deeper and deeper, oftentimes that's what you're looking for, is to use mind over matter. Now when you're trying to connect with spirits, it's a little different. It's still, you're trying to connect to the spiritual world and get them to influence the physical world or your emotional world. It could be your own emotional world state. You know, especially with Hinduism, when you're praying to Ganesh, which is a merciful spirit in Hinduism, one of the first you pray to, oftentimes you're praying to Ganesh and feeling his presence to work on your internal world, to get past your own internal obstacles, which is equally as valid as asking, St. Michael to praying to St. Michael and getting in the right state to protect yourself or gain courage inside yourself. These kind of things. It is mind over matter, but we're using a metaphor at this point, an intelligent metaphor, a metaphor that can talk back to you and give you some insights in a way because we naturally want to communicate, and it's easier for us to communicate with something than to just abstract, throw it out there.
So now what is the colorful cloth there that you brought?
Oh, this is my divination set.
Okay.
So I just have a tarot card that's in there.
Okay.
Just kind of like what I use to. This is one of the things about, you read occultism, metaphysics, a lot about divination. So we could pull out a card and I could show you. This is the Thoth deck.
Okay.
I have some other things in there which are just kind of trinkets that I carry around from my guides and the spirits that I have close relationships with.
Now, do you talk with your spirits?
I do.
Do they talk back?
Well, not in the insane sort of way, but yes. I mean, they will. And the truth is, you can have a conversation with anything. Now, what dictates whether you're insane or not is whether or not the answers you get back are meaningful in the real world.
Do you think you're insane?
I don't think I'm insane now, no. And for most days I don't. But I'm also very careful. It's easy to do this and go off the deep end. It's easy because people do not put it into a context, a realistic framework. If you're talking to the spirits per se, and you believe in that, as many Catholics do with the saints, and they talk back to you and they give you advice, you should be able to test that advice. You should be able to see some things in the world that indicate it's right. Now, for those of you out there who've listened to a real psychic or have had an experience like that or an intuition, it is really fine-tuning your intuition. If that intuition's right, and it's just coming from something that you perceive as communicating with you, it's still, the validity is based not upon any other factor than it was right, and it was giving you advice or information you could not otherwise have had that proven to be right. And that's how you stay sane with it. This is how you not only stay sane, but you better your life, because then you don't go on errant fool's traps, you don't get stuck in kind of mental loops that don't make any sense. You really are validating what you're doing based on, is this working? Is this getting better? And in that point, whether or not you're insane is irrelevant, because your life is better. It's tangibly better by all the criteria you're measuring.
Is this the work of the devil? Because that, I believe, would be the argument by most people.
Except there's about 100 other religions in the world outside of Christianity that don't believe in the devil. So, I don't believe in the devil.
What religion are you?
Well, I'm a voodoo assant. I'm a voodoo priest. But I've worked with ceremonial magics of different things.
Now, what does that mean in the realm of religion? Voodoo assant.
I'm initiated priest of Haitian voodoo.
How were you initiated?
I went to Haiti.
That's all you have? But I mean, what makes you a voodoo?
No, I went through the initiation ceremony.
Which is what?
Well, I can't go into details about the exact ceremony, but you're sequestered and put in, and a certain set of actions are done that are pretty much traditional in Haiti. That everyone has to go through the same exact things, and then just like as in if you're a Catholic priest, you have to go through a set of steps. It's the same thing.
Now, why can't you talk about the steps?
Because I'm oath-bound. Just as in Catholic priests and every other religion, priests are oath-bound to not talk about the steps, essentially. Because it's the priest's role, basically, to know what the steps are.
Now, are we talking, though, about study, or are we talking about physical steps?
It's study and physical steps. It is both.
Would any of these steps be deemed illegal or harsh in the United States?
No,
okay.
I'll say no to that.
Okay. Now, I do want to show some of the items, though, that you brought, because we're going to take a commercial break here, then we're going to come back and top hypnotism. But let's see some of the items here close up.
Well, here's the tarot card that I drew, which is a great card to draw.
See if we can get a zoom here.
And I have to talk a little bit about divination systems.
There we go.
That's a great card. Six of Cups, which is emotional well-being, pleasure, happiness. You know, the Michael candle.
Let's see that there.
See, which shows Saint Michael getting rid of negative forces, the entropic forces of the world, like fighting the good fight. See, I brought this is just a red cloth. This is just some oil, which I put this together myself. I don't know if people want to know what's in it. It's mostly just dragon's blood, which is a type of herb.
Dragon's blood. What kind of herb?
It's palm resin.
Palm resin. Okay.
So
not really a dragon's blood.
No.
Okay.
No, definitely not. It's all herbal based.
Okay. And did you have anything else there in the?
No, some of the things was just like a little cross, for myself, and coins and stuff like that, so you could see. Red cross with gold and some coins from Haiti to remind me.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, we are going to take a commercial break. We do need to get that in. We're going to come back with expert in voodoo, hypnosis, all kinds of things. Andrieh Vitimus going to get into hypnosis right after this. Be back with more. Are you looking for affordable office space in Marion? The professional building located at 685 Delaware Avenue is the place for you. For more information, call 740-383-6803. Office space is now available. Again, telephone number 740-383-6803. Scott Spears back with you on Scott Spears Now. The guest today, voodoo expert, metaphysician, Andrieh Vitimus. Hypnotist also. And now we're going to get to a very interesting part of the program here. A lot of people, Hollywood has been into this. Numerous people have been into this. Hypnotism for years and years and years. Today, Andrieh has volunteered, this is no pre-plan or anything of that nature, to hypnotize our cameraman, who's always in the room here with us, Sean Kraft, and we're going to invite him on camera here. And he's one of my people, so it's not a plant. So we'll see what happens. Andrieh, Sean, you can enter the shot now, and we will see what goes on here. Now, Andrieh, before we do this to Sean while he gets over there, tell us a little bit about what's going to happen.
I'm just going to help Sean relax a little today. I'm not going to do anything crazy, because we're on camera. So the camera kind of things. It's kind of, I want to really kind of reset the tone. Hypnosis is another thing that, Swangoolie in Hollywood makes it seem like it is, but it's a powerful tool of self-change and really in the starting phases to just relax. And I don't know how Sean feels about the camera or not.
Now will he be able
I'm
to?
usually behind the scenes.
Will he be able to? Will you be able to make him do something that he doesn't know he's doing? Because that's what people think hypnosis is.
The thing behind that is usually when that occurs, it's because it's a stage show, and you can, in some situations, make people do that, but only if they're willing. So in a stage show, there's an expectation effect. They want to be part of the show. It's literally kind of like, and has been for many years, the Girls Gone Wild syndrome. When there's a camera, people will do things they never will do. And it's the same thing, but not everyone will. There's a certain type of person that really enjoys it. So they are more easily hypnotized and they really will go into it. And they're doing it because they really want to be part of the show. So
Let's see it.
Now, Sean, I know the camera, you're usually behind the camera.
Yeah,
right?
right.
So how does it feel to be behind the camera?
A little different.
A little different?
Yeah.
Is it more relaxing?
No.
No?
No, I don't like the camera.
Either side?
No. I mean, I don't like to be in front of the camera. How's that?
Right. So,
Yeah.
So you're nervous right now because you're in front of the camera a little bit, right? So, now, before, one of the things I said is I want you to really pay attention to what I'm saying, and I want you to ask you a couple questions.
Yeah.
Do you want to be hypnotized today?
Sure.
Sure? Is that a yes?
Yes.
So do you want to be hypnotized?
Yes.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Are you absolutely sure?
I'm absolutely sure.
Okay. Now the second question is, what would it be like if you could go in front of the camera any time and not be worried about it?
That'd be good.
Would it?
Yeah.
Can you imagine what that's like?
Yeah.
So, I want you to take your hand. Now I'm going to count to 3, and when I count to 3, I'm going to say something, and I want you to do exactly what I said. I want you to close your eyes and breathe as deeply as you can. Not yet, because I haven't counted to 3, have I?
Okay. Yeah.
Don't jump the gun.
You're early, see?
I'm early.
So, when I count to 3, close your eyes, and then, then do what I'm saying, and just start breathing as deep as you can, okay? So 1, 2, 3, sleep. Just let yourself go. Now, imagine what it would be like right now when you're right here, going deeper and deeper and deeper into relaxation, deeper. I'm going to have you in a second, not right now, in a second, when I tell you to, open your eyes and close them, and when you do, you go 10 times as relaxed as you are now. So, let's open them. Go 10 times deeper, let your whole body just sink, relax. It feels really good as your shoulders, back, muscles, legs all relax at the same time, right now, deeper. And I want you to imagine that between your eyes there's 9,000 super glue, 9,000. So keep your eyes shut, closed, and as long as you focus on how tightly closed your eyes are, you'll just feel your body relax more and more and more and more and more. You might even notice that as you concentrate on your eyes, which are becoming more and more relaxed, your whole body just relaxes. And in fact, not right now, in the future, perhaps a week from now, you can see yourself in front of the camera. And you notice how relaxed you are, how deeply relaxed you are, and how wonderful it feels to be that relaxed, confident, secure, comfortable, all of the above. And as you go deeper and deeper right now, even the confidence grows. And I want you to walk to that person who's sitting there confidently, relaxed in front of the camera. And I want you to put that person on like a suit and see how it feels to be confident, relaxed, secure, comfortable. Camera's rolling, and you're just shining like a beacon of confidence, like a rock star. Feels really good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Feels really good.
Right.
Doesn't feel good?
Mm-hmm.
So as I count to 3, you have that whole suit on. As I count to 3, you're going to put super glue 9,000 on the zipper. So you're going to have that suit all the time, and it will become part of you. 1, 2, 3. Super glue. How do you feel right now in front of the camera?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah?
I feel relaxed.
You like a rock star?
Yeah, I feel like a rock star.
Now, are you sure?
I feel.
Now what did you feel there in all that?
I feel relaxed.
What, did you know
It's
where
ready.
you were the whole time? Did you know where you were the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens in hypnosis?
It is a point of focus. Our minds don't understand language. That's why we can't tell ourselves. Our subconscious minds, I should say, don't understand language. Language comes at a later development. But our subconscious mind controls our emotions. So when you want to communicate with your subconscious mind, you have to use metaphor. And you're changing your focus from this, the external world, to the metaphor, progressively. And as you keep going deeper with the hypnosis, you're making that metaphor more real and paying attention to it. And your subconscious mind gets it. It understands. This is what they're trying to say by the metaphor. And that's why hypnosis can change patterns. That's why it can help you be a better businessman, be more successful. In some ways, it explains why I got into it, because it helps you communicate with the spiritual world, because you get in states of consciousness faster, just merely by thinking about it in a certain way.
Sure.
Like what you did, where you went in, and at first you were nervous, then you relaxed. Then afterwards, when you experience that, you can always go back to the experience of that confidence anytime you're having to go in front of the camera.
Right. Just picture the suit on.
Right. And from there on, you know what you can do. And if you did that enough times, or each time from this point on, because you super glued the suit on, you would realize you have the suit on.
That's right.
And then you would just be more confident and have no problem in front of the camera.
So there's really no way to put somebody in a position to where they wouldn't know what they were doing.
There's ways to do it, but it's not easy and it takes time. I mean, certainly we could get all conspiratorial, and there's certain, government programs people talk about that do this sort of thing. But really, if I hypnotize people again, I have access to them a couple times, I could then embed commands and tell them to forget it. But in front of the camera the first time, that's going to be very difficult.
Okay.
Later, however, we could do that. And in some cases, even the way that that's done is usually done for entertainment purposes, and people know that. So it's not. Now, when it's done for worse purposes, and one of the worst purposes it's done for is actually advertising. This is done, hypnosis type things are done in advertising all the time, and people don't remember seeing the ads usually. Sometimes they do, but usually not. And it's because of the repetition gets in our subconscious mind and they buy certain products. That's an example of hypnosis in action, or neurolinguistic programming and cognitive science in action. That has a deleterious effect on many people. We buy stuff we don't need, and it's done automatically. You don't even remember how it's doing. And commercials are great at those kind of linking desires, just like in the same exact way we just did with Sean. We linked a different state, but now it's linking a product to a certain state.
Well, Sean, you can go back to your seat now if you like. I appreciate you being the
Thank you.
guinea
Thank you,
pig
sir.
here for this.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Now, we're on limited time here, Andrieh, so I want to cover two things real quick. We talked a minute earlier on about the devil a little bit. You say you don't believe in the devil. Why?
Well, first, the devil is a very Christian construct that's originally based off of Greek mythos in the god Pan and pandemonium and Pan. It's partially a concept in Judaic history of Satan is the adversarial angel that tests you for your worth. And through the course of history, if you actually study it, the devil was kind of something that got made into Christianity. It's not a concept in every religion. Certainly the Buddhists do not have a concept of the devil. Pagans don't have a concept of the devil. It is Christianity that has a real concept of the devil that opposes us. And earlier, Zoroastrianism, that actually probably was the start of the notion of the devil, where there's this opposing force to God. But in my eyes, it's inconsistent. God created everything. How can there be an equal opposing force to all that is? That's a very naive concept of God.
Where do you go when you die?
Well, as a voodoo assad, I don't know. I haven't died yet. However, I believe that we go into the waters, and then we get the waters are where all the other ancestors are, and that we can communicate with the living through that. And maybe I come back or not. We'll see.
Is that heaven?
It's not exactly heaven. It's not hell. It's just different from here. It could be a heaven. And I think one of the best movies I ever saw that explains what a good possible afterlife is, what dreams may come. It isn't the fact that you are necessarily, a devout Christian that might get you to heaven. It's the fact that your consciousness creates a world around you that is heaven. You can do this right now, actually, too. Now, that's not a belief that is necessarily a Christian belief, not at least in standard Christianity, but in Gnostic Christianity, it's there, and in other forms of Eastern religions, and a lot of other religions. So we have to realize that Christianity and the devil and all this is just one religion, and it's not even a religion, although it's a majority religion in the United States of America. Most Canadians, in fact, would be more secular. They would just simply not believe, if you go up there, in necessarily religion. And in other parts of the world, Buddhism is, the major religion, or Hinduism. So one of the insights that people have to realize is that we can't talk to each other if we absolutely assume that, we can assume that these religions are wrong, other religions are wrong. But then people make the same assumption about us, that Christianity is wrong. Now, I don't think that anything is wrong. I just have different metaphors for explaining different things and a certain worldview along with that. And that's fine. And we would do a lot better, the devil hysteria particularly, we would do a lot better if we would focus on, well, how do we make things better for each other, as opposed to, that's the devil. Because that's a religious belief that not everyone shares. It's shocking to say that, but realistically, the two most growing religious practices are atheism and paganism in the United States of America, which tells you, or the New Age movement. So it tells you that the two most growing things essentially don't have a conception of the devil. Neither do Hindus. They do have a conception of opposition, as it were, that there are bad things that happen because for one reason or another. But ultimately, what we should be asking is, if you're a Christian particularly, it's like, well, how do I live in a way that Christ asked? Let's not worry about, is that person doing the devil's work? Because if they're doing the good work, as in they're helping people get better, have more better, happy lives, they're probably not doing the devil's work.
Andrieh, I want to ask you one final question. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope you do come back. It's very fascinating. But you do, for these services, hypnotism, self-confidence, ritual ceremonies, you do charge a fee for this?
For some.
Okay. Now, for people, forgive me, who say that you prey on their weakness, spiritual belief, that you prey on the weak-minded to get money, that you're a phony, a fake nutcase. What do you say to those people?
I don't do work for people off the street. I don't want their money. You have to get to know me before I do work now.
But you take the money of the people who you know.
If they know me and I know they're serious, and and many people will stand up, and I can they will stand up and say that, yeah, this stuff works. I've gotten results. You know, it took about the time period he said. You know, it wasn't quite the charmed time period of tomorrow, and I usually would be good about that, but they do the things and their lives are better. You know, that isn't spiritual predatism if their lives are better. That means you're doing something. What that is, we can argue. It could be all sleight of mind, and that's a possible explanation. But still, if I'm willing to spend hours and hours counseling you, which is part of a priest's job, to make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time, and then do service which takes energy, that doesn't sound like fraud or hucksterism. It sounds like somebody who cares about these people, and that's why I don't do it for people who just walk off the street. You know, it's not just the ceremony, it's also the counseling, the acting as a priest, as in the making sure that things are okay, and that's what priests do, and that's that's what real priests should do, even in Catholicism, in Protestantism, but they don't. And somewhere along, we've lost that. And that's what I do.
So is this I think maybe people would say a religion with props?
Well, all religions have props. I mean, it's only Protestantism that you don't have any props. Catholics have lots of props. There's lots of saints, you know, to pray to. You know, there's many religions that have lots of props, as it were.
But I would say this is more, if somebody comes to you and says, I want relationship help, I want banishing help, I want self-confidence help, I want to be hypnotized to lose weight or to quit smoking,
well,
they're coming with a specific reason. I think if you go to a Catholic church or a Christian church or a Jewish temple, I think they'll all kind of give you the same answer, not with props. They're going, and I don't think the priest will charge. On Sunday, they'll take up a donation.
You're technically supposed to give 10% of your income to the Catholic Church.
But it's not mandatory.
It's heavily, you are supposed to. It is actually mandatory. They don't enforce it. But if you are a Catholic, you are supposed to give 10%, and it is mandatory. If you are a Mormon, you're supposed to give 10% by faith.
But supposed to, and I will do this if you give me this, are two different things.
It is, and you know, I could tell everyone that I work with, you have to give me 10% of the money a month you make, and it would be a hell of a lot more than what they're giving me, I guarantee you. Then, you know, if you want this, this is a set of steps we're going to do in 6 months. So, yeah, in a way, it's kind of like that is really paying for the materials needed more than anything else, and the time. It's not paying for the work per se. It's paying for my time that I have to spend on it. Now, if you're not going to put tithing in the same role as that, it's hard to say that because it seems the same. In fact, when you tithe, you don't even get any of that kind of in-person service. You just pay and pay and pay, and you're expected to pay as a doctrine of faith. So you're not even working on one aspect of your life to improve it, even for 6 months or whatever. You're just paying because you're supposed to. Now, right, granted, you could say a lot of people don't pay, but then I would argue by the doctrines of faith in Catholicism and Mormonism, they aren't being good Catholics. They actually, if the church would ever try to prove that, or I think Mormonism is much more anal about proving that they would be ostracized or excommunicated in a way.
I get it. We're running out of time, but I want to make sure you have the last word here. But what I would say is to oppose that, and I think the general audience would say is, it seems kind of like the fast food approach. Because I think when people tithe and people go to church on a regular basis, it's a lot of ingredients that go together to what the goal is to make a good person, a good Catholic, a good Christian, a good person of Jewish faith, a good Palestinian, whatever it would be. But in your case, you're saying, I have this problem, you pay me this amount, and we will fix this.
Well, I will say that the difference here is, while I might guide you to where I think you should go, ultimately I know, unlike a lot of these religions, that the choice is yours. So while I know you and you might have this problem and I might fix it, this is why I have to know people. when they don't have a problem, I'm certainly going to try to guide them in what I think is their greatest potential, because that's again what a priest does. I'm not going to really say, pay me X amount of money so you'd have this great cosmic power. No, because I'm not spending that kind of time. But I will try to help them, give people experiences if they want, that will try to help move them in that direction. In a way, the difference here is who has the locus of control. In metaphysics, generally speaking, it is you who we're trying to develop to the greatest potential you can possibly get to, whatever that is. And it's different for each person. It's not the same. It's not the same for me. It's not the same for you. It's not the same for Sean. It's different for each person. Instead of telling you this is the end goal, instead of guide you to say, here's some techniques, and you're expected to take it upon yourself to use these different techniques to figure out and move towards what is your own personal greatest outcome, your greatest potential, your greatest happiness, and in a way, what some people would say higher calling.
It's fascinating. It truly is, Andrieh. I want to show your book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's show that, because there is a
my
book.
first book, yes.
First book.
Took 6 years to write.
Yeah, and the title is, for people who want to get a copy?
It's called Hands-on Chaos Magic.
And what in 10 seconds, what can the book do for people?
It is a guide to start from beginning the path of metaphysics and magic up to more advanced work. So it teaches you everything you need to know to understand how to actually change your reality and how to think differently so that way your reality changes for the better.
And you can get this online.
It's you can get it online. You can get it at finer metaphysics and occult stores. And for everyone watching, I strongly encourage you to go to a metaphysical store because they really are hurting, and like most local stores are hurting. So just ask for it. It's a Llewellyn book, so it's available. Anyone can get it, basically. You can get it from any store. If you can buy it from a local store, ask them to order it.
Perfect. Andrieh Vitimus has been the guest. What an interesting conversation it has been. Take care, everybody.